Hi everyone. Today I will be talking to Warren Beazley about the role of the CTO within the insurtech firm. We will also talk about digital transformation and disruption and how to drive operational resilience. So come and join us. So hi everyone. Thank you for participating to our webcast and podcast. For some of you listening to this through our Spotify channel. I would like to introduce you today to Warren Beazley, who has been working with insurers within the insurance sector now for a while, and also has a very known name, Beazley. So Warren, can you tell us your connection with the insurance sector and tell us a little bit more about you?
Certainly. Thank you for having me here today, Sabine. This is a first for me, so I'm really excited about having this chat with you guys today. So my insurance experience goes back to the 90s when I worked in what used to be called the HS Weavers stamp, which was made up of a number of London market insurers, predominantly insuring North American risks from EPA, asbestos through to PI, which was the area that I was involved with back then. It has been a family thing, I guess, because my brother also worked for various Lloyd's brokers as a claims broker. But I actually left work in insurance in the mid-90s to work in recruitment. And my brother followed me out of insurance as well to work with me in recruitment. And we set up our own business back in 99. That business was predominantly technology based. So we were recruiting IT, digital tech professionals. There wasn't a focus on the insurance sector per se, but we obviously had a soft spot for any clients that we work with within that industry. And probably in the last 10 years, my focus has been very much on technology leaders, CTOs, CIOs, heads of, VPs, etc. That's a brief about my background. And you mentioned my surname as well. The spelling of it, which is exactly the same as the underwriting agency, which I believe is underwriter 1066, or somebody will correct me if I'm wrong. But alas, there's no family connection other than the unusual spelling of my surname. But it has, and it did, should we say, broke some ice many an evening in Leadenhall Market or Lime Street or the hostelries around Fenchurch Street Station. So it had its benefits, but I'm afraid that was about it. So yeah, no connection to I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. No, that's all right. And I'm sure, the great connections you've made and as a, icebreaker are probably relationship which have lasted since. So today, I think, Warren, we'd like to cover a few points. I know you're an expert around the Chief Technology Officer. And the purpose of this discussion we have today is to give some insight to the insurtech world, the ventures entering insurtechs, or the most established players and scale-ups, we call them often, on the best way to recruit for technology. And so we'd like to cover some point around digital transformation and the disruption affecting our market. The role of the CTO and your experience working with CTOs and how you recruit them, how you select them for technology companies, and how long-term can we drive operational resilience as we look at this important role, partly coming out of the current situation. So the first question I have for you, Warren, is what are the digital trends you are seeing in technology and affecting talent acquisition within our world, and what threats do we need to pay attention to?
Okay, so I think that there is a generic picture, if you like, or landscape that we have, but would seem to have more of an impact certainly in insurance and the insurtech world, which and the biggest one for me is data, and the way that big data, which has grown enormously in the time that I've worked in technology, and literally on a day-to-day basis, the impact that the ways that data is generated, and how both more established insurers and insurtechs can use that data, whether you're an actuary setting out premiums at one end, or whether you're analysing fraudulent claims at the other end, and everything in between. The enormity of data now, along with data science, data analytics, and combining that with advancement in other technologies like the cloud, the Internet of Things, generic data analytics is obviously a massive area in its own right, and which I sort of put under one umbrella of big data, but that means so much, and that impact, which has also driven a lot of the newer companies by being able to analyze and utilize potential and finding potential gaps in the market where technology can fill those gaps is really interesting. So big data, technology are great, but when there's a reliance on technology, there has to be, or typically, that there's also there's also areas that you have to be very mindful of, and it's a common thing now that we hear about cybersecurity, we hear about data breaches, and I've had many conversations with people who are far more learned than me, who experience these challenges that come about with technology. And I think quite an interesting point is that still now, it would seem that the biggest, should we say, area to focus on for stemming the increase in, I'll call it cybersecurity, cyber hacking, whatever you want to call it, comes from human error, and that is a big responsibility of tech leaders. And it may not be something that they can do themselves, but it's certainly a message that really needs to be enforced at every single level of an organisation, particularly those that have a reliance on technology. So big data, cyber, and I think the last thing, which is an area that I've had a personal interest in and fascination with for a number of years now, is distributed ledger, or as most people know it, blockchain, and the real impact and the, if you like, the paradigm shift that can deliver to organizations and industries such as insurance and insurtech. And I think there's been a reluctance so far to really embrace that. And I think if there was, I'm not a betting man, but if I was a betting man, then I think that we'll start seeing the emergence of more blockchain-related solution providers, providing an end solution to clients within insurtech that rely on blockchain or the distributed ledger,
yes,
in one way or another.
Actually, Warren, so as I build the Startup Bootcamp InsurTech program in 2015, actually, we used to see a lot of blockchain startup coming through the program, and I didn't select at the time any insurtechs which focused on blockchain, simply because the market was not ready for it, and I could not see any venture, corporate venture, so meaning partner, for me, the insurer, collaborating with those ventures. And so while we saw quite a few, and one of them actually which did formed part of the fintech program. Name was Tradle, which has been doing right okay and actually moved back to New York. It was probably one of the few that were part of our programming because the market was not ready. However, you've seen B3I, you've done seen R3, which have become, you know, first B3I for banking with a few insurers, and then R3 becoming the platform for blockchain and insurance. And hopefully we'll see more happening in the future.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. I think there's a, there seemed to be a momentum change. Sort of 2 or 3 years ago, there was an initial push to anything that could be used in the blockchain, whether it be insurance, whether it be real estate, you know, fine art, precious gems. You know, there was a lot of money thrown at it. But you're right, it sort of dissipated a little bit, but it's coming back. I think as the technologies become more lean, more reliable, that we're going to see a far bigger emergence of it. So that's an area that I think is certainly of interest, and I think there'll be a lot more within the insurtech related solution providers. Absolutely.
So Warren, when you look at the cloud, big data, you mentioned artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. So what does that mean for the technology leaders of the future? What do they need to know? What do they need to do to be ready for challenges brought about by these technologies?
I think I would probably flip that on its head a little bit, and I would be asking the leaders of businesses now to question what it is that they require, what it is that they're looking for. I'm a great believer that talent, genuine talent, has no real border. And what I mean by that is that talent is transferable across. So you mentioned AI, you know, cybersecurity, all of these, and I'll sort of, for the sake of this discussion, bunch them all together as, you know, cutting edge technology. But ultimately, it's about delivering a solution, and it's delivering a solution that's going to impact an end client, an end customer, whether that be a corporate, whether that be an individual. So all of these all of this technology will one day be replaced, but it's finding an individual, a person that's able to scale, someone that has experience of leading, someone that has experience of moving a business from whatever phase it's in now. And this is what's really key with the business leaders, recognizing the phase that they're in now. I call it the bedroom phase, where it starts. It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but pre-seed stage through to world domination. And the technology leaders that are required at each of those separate phases is different. Now, you can get the same person that can deliver well enough in each of those phases, or they can nurture themselves and grow their skills. But essentially, I'm not a believer in an individual, you know, going away and you know, genning up on a particular technology. That's a given. And if the talent is there, they'll get that specific experience of blockchain, AI, quantum computing, you know, whatever it may be. It's as a tech leader, that for me is the real focus, is finding the real talent, you know. And it's not just about finding a CV. My job isn't to find CVs. I mean, with respect, it's not a real challenge to find a great CV. My job is to decode a CV, is to understand the value that this person is going to give my client. If that's an insurtech client, then we need to understand the solution that they're looking to resolve with their product, and to try and keep it as really as simple as that. So I apologize for batting that back to you, but there's a whole list of separate technologies, individual technologies, that talent will have to bring themselves up to speed on. But there's a generic thing that it's something that I'm beginning to sound like Simon Cowell, but there's an X factor here with talent, particularly when you're leading technology functions, and it's very difficult to assess that unless sometimes you have to look somebody in the eye. Sometimes you just get an appreciation of how someone answers a question, how their career has panned out from when they left uni, if they even went to uni, to where they are now, how they got to where they are now. There's a whole myriad of things, of techniques that I would use and my team would use to assess whether we're looking or whether we're dealing with real, genuine talent. And that is the $64,000 question, really, that I think
it's interesting, actually, because you have highlighted, and that is one of the points I was also hoping that you would stress, is that it's not at the end about technology, it's about business problem and business leadership. So helping businesses to grow based on the clients they are aiming to serve. Yeah. Now, I think another issue often when we think about technology is that the technology leader of tomorrow need also to be able to understand that customer very well, that customer engagement and those customer journey, because today now organization need to deliver those macro services, and it's being a translator and an orchestrator, I think. And from the business commentary you just made, I think what comes to mind for me is, what does it mean for regulation? Does that technology leader needs to be as fluent into business lingo and connecting the dot as it needs to be around regulation too?
That's an interesting point. I think there's a couple of answers to that, and something that I'd like to see more of with insurtechs is collaboration with what I describe as the establishment, the established players in insurance, and I think that will have a positive impact on regulation, on understanding compliance, and when I refer to those, I'm talking about the direct impact that an insurance product has to go through in order for it to be marketed and then to be monetized. But I think the other element here in terms of you mentioned about regulation, is how a product is defined now. Whereas in years gone by, it was very standard to provide somebody with an off-the-shelf product, i.e. this is one size that has to fit everybody. And then one of the wonderful things about technology is that you can now define a product, or sorry, should I say, a end client, a customer can now define the exact product that they want. Now that opens up a minefield with regards to regulation and compliance and stuff like that. But it's through data, which I mentioned a moment ago, that businesses, that insurtechs can use that data to understand exactly what it is that an end client, an end consumer would require. But to take it to the next stage, we're actually giving the choice to a consumer to decide how they want to structure a particular area of protection for themselves. Is wonderful, but that in itself also opens up a potential Pandora's box, if you like, with regards to compliance and regulation. And I think that, and I'm not an expert on insurance regulation, and I've had, in the past, the offices in Gresham Street where I've had to visit and discuss these sorts of things, but this was back in the 90s when I worked in insurance, and I know things have changed since then. But I think that there is going to be a greater reliance and an understanding of the agile way that products will now be presented to the consumer. And when I mean agile, I mean flexibility. Everything's focused around what a customer, a client wants. Will the compliance and the regulators be able to, would they be incentivized to be able to provide the type of compliance that will be as lean, or working towards being as lean as that. And these are things that I've heard people discussing, and the challenges about these bespoke products. And it's the consumer that decides how bespoke it is, not somebody telling them what they need to have, which I think is the key differentiator. And there are companies out there now doing it, and I think they're having challenges. And there's a couple that spring to mind, and I'm going to, oh, crikey, I can't think at the moment. I apologise, but there's a couple of, yeah, you probably know companies yourself that are offering this type of tailored solution for a particular class of insurance, and that people can literally cherry pick what they want.
You have many of those, and I guess more of them are appearing as well in the Lloyd's market and specialty lines. In some of the ventures I tend to mention a lot would be LACA, who actually has personalized bike insurance, e-bike, e-scooter, by really learning very well that customer segment and the need of that customer segment, and having insurance to be part of that proposition. You have great company like Bought by Many, who actually focusing on the pet lover, and you probably see a lot of their wonderful ads on TV, which show that emotional connection with the customer and the customer's pet. And they have a new ad which came out actually just this morning around their 24/7 vet doctor, which is available to all their customers. So that is the level of personalization. And when you start looking as well at the products, the product is very modularized, where people can get a price based on the items they are selecting, often within the different subcomponent of the product offered. Which takes me to a question around, so what does that mean in terms of recruitment? What would be the top 3 things a venture, an insurtech needs to look at when looking at the perfect technology leader or CTO? Partly when you mentioned that we need to focus on the customer, right? We need to be aware of conduct risks. We need to be aware of the regulation. And also when you start looking at the GDPR and data protection and data privacy rules, you need to, some of those tech leaders may actually be need to sign up on the dotted line that they have the right capability, the right protection, the right rules and regulation internally to protect their businesses in the future, or they could actually be fined or even go to jail as a result if they are not following the right regulations.
Absolutely. I think you've I think again, without wishing to be too non-specific, depending on the stage that this business is at, things such as GDPR compliance, regulatory compliance, these issues, these cybersecurity issues and challenges are all, and I don't want to sound too dismissive, but they're all kind of a given. And for me, it's really key that when I speak to an organisation that's looking to recruit within as a tech leader, that I'm speaking to either the CEO or the founders, but people that are able to take a look at their business and to be able to tell me about their business and to actually create and share their vision, paint a picture to me about where their business is right now and where they want it to go. Now, that will likely encapsulate all of those things that you've mentioned. And it's really important that they're documented and that we understand that as, if you like, as a tick box of essential things. But as a technology company looking to bring on board a pivotal person into their business that's going to, and I believe as a technology business, it's probably the most important hire that they make. I can't overemphasize the real importance over understanding exactly what it is that they want and exactly where they are. Some companies don't get a grasp on where their business is in terms of which phase they're in. Very often, I'm contacted by a startup with some very passionate individuals, some very talented founders, and they require somebody who's a technical co-founder.
Yeah,
who's a
that's
CTO.
often the case. Yes, this is
Yeah.
often the case. You will find that in every tech venture. So that was the biggest problem we had when we were running Startup Bootcamp. So when we had teams coming together, when you had a CEO, maybe a chief operating officer, maybe a CMO, the first things they would want to do is, okay, how do I recruit my CTO, Sabine? And a lot of things we were doing is go through, Silicon Roundabout in the old street to actually go to event where you may find other founders, technically minded founders or entrepreneurs who may be good candidates to become co-founders or employees.
Great. It's a really,
so tell us
really
a bit more
good
about
option.
that. Yeah,
that's a really good option. I think the key thing that to sort of finish that that comment is that CTO that you mentioned, that you're going to perhaps go to, to places like Silicon Roundabout, to hackathons, and they look to try and find that real talent, that those people that aren't out there with their CVs on job boards, they're not updating their profiles on LinkedIn. They're what I call, with the greatest of respect, the lurkers, the doers, the people that are out there under the parapet, but are actually doing the really great, interesting stuff. Those people are effectively developers most of the time, and their job role, and should I perhaps say that what they're actually needed, the qualities that they're required for by the technology company, depending on the stage that they're at, but we're looking at an early phase here, is essentially a full stack developer that has confidence enough in suggesting a particular technology strategy that has the ability to scale. But ultimately, here's a keyboard. Can you please build it for us? Or can you please bring the people in to build it for us? So perhaps that entrepreneurial spirit that we assume that every tech leader should have isn't that important at that phase. And perhaps that CTO, that full stack developer stroke CTO, once they start to scale, maybe isn't the right person to take the, to lead the technology at that stage. So it's really, as I said, it's very, very key. And one of the first things I find that great CTOs do when they join a business is they'll do their analysis. They'll look at what the business is about, what the goals are. But there are always assumptions given. There are always answers to assumptive questions within a presentation of a company when they're trying to sell themselves to a great CTO. And believe you me, at one stage of the process, it is a company that's selling themselves to a CTO to try and convince them to join. Is never assume any questions. Every question that has an assumptive answer, question it, and find the questions that aren't being asked. And that's a real quality that I see as a thread that runs through great technology leaders when the business is at a phase when they're looking to scale. And they've already got that foundation in place. And previous technology people have come in and done a great job, but the skills that I needed now are different to them. And that's something which I think ties in nicely with the data, and also ties in nicely with the compliance and the regulation. Being too assumptive, a startup can fall on its face. Could have a great product, but unfortunately, they're not able to sell it in 80% of the countries that they want to because they don't have the right regulations in place but they assume that they have, and it's too late sometimes for them to make the necessary changes. So yeah, it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. It really isn't. And my job is to try and understand exactly where a company is, where a business is, and to share their vision, to share their why, to get it. Because when I speak to somebody, I have to act as their representative. I have to be never as passionate as they are, but to try and be nearly as passionate as they are, and to share that vision with somebody. And it's only then really that you can understand if someone's going to be that right fit. It's going to be able to take that business forward and scale it into the world domination that I'm sure they're all hoping for.
Absolutely. Many of those ventures are looking for world domination. So what I heard from your comments is that to be able to identify the right CTO and recruit the right CTO, a young venture needs to have, in some ways, articulated and codified their vision, mission, the direction they are going on. You know, they have to be clear as to where they are and where they want to be able to actually share with you the what of what they are trying to build, the product or service. But also what you highlighted is as you introduce those great talent need to be able to question everything and
Absolutely.
be comfortable with what they are seeing is something that can be shaped into a greater venture, a greater project, a greater initiative. Am I right? Are those the main criteria you look at?
Absolutely. I think as a really good benchmark, and you can't apply this to every business, but most commercial businesses exist because there is a problem somewhere, or there is a gap somewhere that needs addressing. And it needs addressing with a solution that you can provide. Yeah, I really, as I said, I don't like to overcomplicate things, but to take that one step further, you know, if a startup isn't able to have a vision of how they want to exit that business, whether it be that they actually don't want to exit the business physically, but what they want to do is to scale it to a particular level and work back, or they do want to exit it, they want to IPO, they want to, whatever they want to do, you'd be surprised at the amount of, and I'll try and word this as positively as I can, the volume of wishy-washy answers I get from people who have got a great product, who have got people who are they're already either funded or on the cusp of being funded, but they don't have the clarity at this stage to know exactly where they want that business to be, how they want that business to mature, or how they want it to exit. And it's very difficult to then convey a complete vision to somebody. So one of the things I would say to an organization is, you know, tell me what is going to happen. You know, how are you going to get out of this business? What is your plan? Most do, don't get me wrong, but there's a healthy percentage of organizations that don't. So, you know, one thing I would say that if I can share my few words of wisdom is, you know, clarity. And there's nothing wrong with dreaming, absolutely not, and having a vision.
Yeah, that is a very great words, which takes me to asking you if there were 3 core skills you want to see in the technology leader of tomorrow. Yeah. What would those be? You know, if you say to your insurtech, look at these candidates, and I know you actually break down, you look at the CV and you break down and that CV and look at the core skills, which would be the most relevant for the individual. But looking at it from the insurtech viewpoint, if there were 3 core skills they would need to consider for their leader of tomorrow, what would they be?
I think in terms of skills, I think these would apply across all industries. If you want me to be specific to insurtech, then there's assumption that's made is that that we're only going to be approaching individuals with insurtech experience. So I'll give that.
Yeah, just leadership and no.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first thing I would do is I would, when speaking to somebody, is I would want to get a clear idea of their career journey from when they started in technology to where they are now. And what I mean by that is that I want to know if this individual has found his current or last 2 or 3 engagements through people like me or through adverts. Because if he has, then that actually throws up a bit of a red flag to me. I want to speak to people who have found their last jobs, and this isn't so much of a skill, it's more of a consequence of their skill, but it speaks out very loudly, is that they've been recommended. They went to a startup because they worked with the CEO at their previous job. He was their boss. And things like that. We want to see people that have been recommended. We want to see people that have been headhunted. One of the most assuring things I get that I'll be told by an individual is, crikey, I've not had an interview in the last 10 or 15 years. I've not had to. That's great, you know, for me. So that's the first thing I look at. I try and look at a pattern that emerges as well. When I'm asking people questions, I always look for great detail in an answer and look for passion in an answer. Generally speaking, generics, if someone gives me a general answer or is non-specific, that to me suggests that perhaps they weren't as involved in a particular project with the depth that maybe they said they were. Not saying for a moment that they weren't telling me the truth, and there's always exceptions to the rule, but look for detail in answers, particularly if you throw somebody a curveball in the conversation, forcing them to more or less tell you how they've coped with a negative situation, what their process was, what happened when it didn't go right, and listen to what they have to say, and allow them to tell you as well. So they're 2 things, and I guess in terms of a track record of a quality, is something as simple as length of tenure. Now that can sometimes be a little unfair, particularly if someone's gone in as what I call a firefighter into a business to turn it around and come out again. But that aside, you want to see lengths of tenure where people have been able to make an impact.
How long would that be?
Sorry?
How long would that be? What would be a good number?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. A wonderful question. I would say that you would need somebody to be engaged somewhere for at least 18 months to 2 years upwards. Unless they're an interim manager or they're a fractional, CTO, where they're there to go in on what I call a mercenary basis. They go in, they deliver, and they go away to the next assignment. But if they're permanent employees, they're part of the executive team, they're part of the senior leadership team in a technology-focused business, it needs to be at least 18 months to 2 years and above as an area of consistency. So it's how they found their jobs, if they're a consistent pattern that follows, how they give you answers, how detailed they are in their answers, and length of tenure. Now, there's a lot of other things as well. We apply levels of science. We'll apply behavioural questioning techniques, competency questioning techniques, but the core basics for me are those 3 things. If I'm looking to be confident that I'm talking to somebody that has the potential to be great talent.
That's superb. That's a great answer, Warren, and actually great takeaways for anyone within, the growth ventures, the young ventures, trying to build businesses and find the right talent. Because I guess those criteria, as you said, are very important for the technology leaders, but I can see those applying to other executives within any team as well. It's interesting because when you talk about often executives, we are often said, we are often told that it's a good number being in a company, as you said, 2 to 3 years. 3 years was the numbers that was often mentioned. Partly when you go at EXO level, 3 years is a good number because yeah, they're enough, long enough, but not too long that it's like the product life cycle, right? There's one point you get saturated and you need to reinvent yourself. And so that 3 years mark has been a number I've heard in the past in various conversations. So interesting.
I think that's a very powerful, comment there, Sabine, because I would say, generally speaking, if we were having this conversation 10 years ago, 5 years ago, then I would 100% be saying 3 to 5 years, with no doubt. But because now with the transition of businesses so quickly, the scale, and we hear that word scale all the time, of real fast growth, that so much can be done in that period of time. But I would certainly err on your side. I'd be more comfortable looking at 3 years plus than 18 months plus. But there are exceptions, and that's the reason why I would sometimes not rule someone out who's only been somewhere for that period of time.
Reading about the millennial, and I know the millennial means so many things, so Gen Z. Often we hear that those guys, will have probably 10 jobs in their career. If actually the number is even near to relevant. So 10 jobs, maybe 3 years or 30 years, 20, probably 10 to 15 jobs actually.
Yeah.
So what does that mean from a recruitment viewpoint when you actually see that, the younger population, entering the marketplace need to hop and sometimes need to work on 2 jobs at the same time to actually feel engaged? Do you see new patterns around employment where people are maybe not full-time, but working on 2 projects at the same time to keep going, to get the skills, to, be able to work for Google and another company at the same time? Do you see that as a pattern in the industry as well?
It's certainly been happening, this gig economy, a side hustle, whatever, however you want to phrase it. I think that it's driven now by an expectation by employers to be able to offer that flexibility or to be accepting of that level of fractional engagement with somebody. I'll be honest with you, I'm maybe a little bit old-fashioned. It doesn't sit comfortably with me, and I don't think it's. I think that depending on an individual, of course, but generally speaking, I think where somebody is in their life journey, which however you want to, it always dovetails at some stage with your career. I think humans want that eventually, that, shall we say, element of consistency, feeling part of a team, being part of a company, family, being proud of something that they've delivered on, and to get to that stage in your journey by operating in that gig economy is fine, but I don't think it's something that's going to be reflective of an entire generation's complete career history. I think we're seeing it now as the millennials are at a particular age, but I don't think it's going to have a major long-term impact. Long after I'm gone, I don't think it's something that will be a big thing. I think it's something that will be there. I think it's something that will be accepted, but I still think the qualities that I look for, generally speaking, the longevity, the commitment, will be the key things that will stand the test of time and continue to do so. But it's very interesting that you say that, because it's definitely, it seems to be more accepted now than it was before.
Partly right now, I can see some more flexibility even from big company where they are because they want the talent and they need to have that flexibility to understand their own customers, so they are willing to consider this type of of this frictionless employment, where you give the choice to people to have, as you say, side hustle. One needs probably the major work, and then another thing need to be minor and probably not competitive either, right? They all need to be mutually exclusive. But it's interesting to see that pattern, actually. So my last question for you, Warren. So if there are a few last words you would like to leave to our audience, what would that be when you look at the future of the CTO and recruiting the right talent?
Yeah, I think as a business, and it's going to sound like I'm a fully paid advocate of the Simon Sinek Club, but really know your why. Really know why it is your business, your entity is in existence, and make sure that you can translate that with passion to whoever it is you have in front of you that you want to bring in as a key member of your team. Don't be fooled that you think that anybody you recruit is going to be as passionate as you are, but you want to bring people in that share your vision and are nearly as passionate as you are. You might be lucky to find someone who's as passionate, but generally speaking, that would be my my lasting comment. I think when particularly recruiting at this level is, yeah, absolutely know your why and make sure that it's transferable, that people can share that vision, and when you bring them into your business.
Thank you, Aaron, for those wise words. Thank you for your time with us today.
Thank you, Sabine.
Pleasure.